and that's Caleb Williams and the Bears. If you've been following us for the last couple months, you know that Caleb Williams is my guy. We each took guys. Caleb Williams is my guy. Your guy is what? C.J. Stroud, right?
Stroud.
My team, because also one of my guys is Trevor Lawrence, so my team is the Jags. I don't even know if you picked a team, but subsequently, when you have a guy, you also get their team as well. So Caleb Williams and the Bears, my guy and my team. And right now, they're currently even money to make the playoffs. They're minus 110 yes and minus 110 no to make the playoffs out of the NFC North. They're just a shade under the Packers in terms of odds to win the division. The Lions are 1, and the Packers are like plus 300, and the Bears are like plus 400, something along those lines. But here's the kicker, right? If you're going to add a playoff team, you take somebody out. You just can't there's 7 playoff teams last year. No, they're all going to make the playoffs again. But the Bears are going to make it as well. You see all these hosts, this is a real playoff contender this year. Okay, well, that's the easy discussion to look at a team. The Falcons bring in Kirk Cousins. That's an easy discussion to say, well, I think they're going to be a playoff team. Well, who are you taking out? Right? So, if I think the Falcons are going to be a playoff team, which I think they're going to win that division, well, who am I going to take out? Probably the Bucs, considering the Bucs won that division last year. I don't think that division's going to get a wild card team. Okay, so the Bucs would be out. Right? So if I'm adding the Bears, who am I taking out? Right? Like our idol, if you will, put that in quotation marks. I don't know if I idolize anybody, but someone that we look up to would be Colin Cowherd, right? He's been really successful. I like his takes. They're highly nuanced, and he's been probably the most successful sportscaster and TV, radio personality over the last 2 decades. First at ESPN, now at Fox. He's big on this idea where it's like, okay, the easy conversation is pointing out the talent of a team that's going to make the playoffs. The hard conversation is who's falling out of the playoffs. The NFL over the last 2 decades, roughly 2 decades, has been consistently turning over 6 to 7 playoff teams each year in each conference. Or I'm sorry, not in each conference. Total. So 3-ish in each conference. So in the NFC, we had the Niners, the Cowboys, the Packers, the Bucs, the Eagles, the Rams, and the Lions last year. So who's in, who's out? So if the Bears are in, I think the Niners are in. I don't think that's too much of a discussion. I think it's the top 3 roster. Brock Purdy's certainly good enough. They have the structure. They have the coaching staff. They stay. I think the Lions probably have the second best roster in football. Really good offensive line. I'm big on winning in the trenches. I'm obviously a huge Jared Goff fan. We can argue about their Super Bowl odds and, can Jared Goff really win a Super Bowl? We can argue about that, but I think they are a playoff team. I don't think anybody's going to really argue that. I think they'll compete for the 1 seed as well. I'm pretty high on the Rams. It's a coach quarterback league, and I think if you combine those two into one ranking, there's an argument that they have the number two ranking there. I'd put Reed and Mahomes. If you would, again, combining the value of coach quarterback, McVay, Stafford, I think they would be number 2. So I think they probably stay. There's some noise I don't love with Matt Stafford's wife, but I mean, whatever. That's fine. Let her talk on miscellaneous podcasts. I think they're fine as a football team. That leaves us with the Packers, Cowboys, Eagles, and Bucks. That they could conceivably take a step back. I think that's realistic that any of them could. I think Philly, with the addition of a real offensive and defensive coordinator and Saquon Barkley, I think they probably win that division. I think they're safely in. The Packers are a young team only getting better. Jordan Love's probably, in my prediction, going to be a top 10 quarterback. I think they stay. So that leaves us with the Cowboys and the Bucks. Let's take a look at this. Let's go ahead and start with the Bucks. Again, I think they probably miss. Baker, to me, is an average quarterback that probably played a little bit above his true potential and true level last year. They played about 9 playoff caliber teams. I think if they don't go 6-3 in those, 5-4, 6-3, I don't view them as a playoff team. I think it's an 8-9, maybe 9-8 team. But I think with a highly competitive NFC this year, which is a little bit different from last year. The NFC last year, top was here, bottom was here. I think it's going to be a lot more competitive this year. So I think they probably miss. But I think I said Atlanta's going to replace that spot because they were a division winner. We're looking at how can the Bears claw their way into a wild card spot. And that brings me to the Cowboys. Because if the Eagles are going to win the division, the Cowboys are going to have to claw tooth and nail to get a wild card spot. They're consistently, and they have been over the last, we'll call it 3 to 4 years, have been a really good regular season team. But the problem is they tend to lose to winning teams and good quarterbacks. I've done this rant 1,000 times on Dak himself and how he performs against winning teams and against losing teams. How he performs against good quarterbacks, bad quarterbacks. How he performs against playoff teams, non-playoff teams. I've done that 1,000 times, and I'm not going to do it, verbatim here. So how many of those teams do they play? Well, they play 10 of those teams that made the playoffs last year. One of those being the Browns. Not sure how we feel about them. But then again, they also play Atlanta, which we think will be a lot better. They also play the Commanders, who had Jaden Daniels, who a lot of people think they'll be a lot better. In those games, Dak is roughly a 500 quarterback, if not slightly below. That's his career average against playoff-level teams. I mean, in those, we'll call it 12 games, because we'll add one of the games against the Commanders, I think, is a viable game when you go to Washington, and then we'll add the game against the Falcons. 12 games. I think they go 5-7 in those games, and I don't think you're going to win every game as a favorite. So, say they win every game as a favorite, they lose those 7 games. That would put them at 10-7. I think they probably lose 1 or 2 games that they're favored in. That puts them at 9-8, 8-9. And I went on this podcast, I went on TikTok saying, I think they go below 500 and miss the playoffs, and I'm predicting an 8-9 team. So who's dropping out of the playoffs? I think it's the Cowboys. I think the Bears are firmly a playoff team. I think Caleb Williams wins Rookie of the Year. I think he is a Pro Bowl fringe caliber quarterback. I think there's an argument for an All-Pro. I think he's going to be that level good. I know you don't. The defense was much better after they got Montez Sweat. They have 3 legitimate receivers, DJ Moore, Keenan Allen, and hopefully Rome Odunze. They're going to be able to run the ball. The offensive line's much improved after they've invested draft capital in it the last couple years. I think that's a playoff team. I worry about Eberflus, sure, but they are going to have a clever young offensive coordinator. I think the Bears are a playoff team, and who's dropping out? I'm taking the Cowboys. I think the Bears take the Cowboys slot, mayhem in Dallas, and the Bears are celebrating. That's my hot take for the day.
Now,